Truth is a concept we rely heavily on, not just in science, but everyday life. But what is truth? What is it that makes true statements true? Even after 2,500 years of trying, we haven't been able to come up with a theory that has a shot of actually working. Does that mean truth is an illusion though? A theory is an answer to a what is question, basically. It involves giving necessary and sufficient criteria, all and only reasons. So for example, to the question what is knowledge, we might give the answer sense perception. We're equating knowledge with sense perceptions now, saying that every and only sense perceptions yield knowledge. A statement is a declarative sentence that's both grammatically well-formed and about something. This sentence isn't about something, it's nonsense. These are statements. They're all both grammatically well-formed and about something. The classical theory of truth has these three components. All and only statements are necessarily either true or false. True statements are true because they correspond to real-world things or state of affairs. False ones are false because they don't. The correspondence itself is made possible by claimed likeness between the real world and the human mind. Our ideas and statements are made copies of the former somehow. This guy is usually credited with coming up with a theory. Yep. That metrosexual dude on the left spinning the imaginary basketball. The theory, though, goes back to the 5th century BC, the meat of it, anyway. The theory doesn't give us a decision procedure, an algorithm, per se. It might not be possible to actually settle a statement's truth value always. We might not ever be able to find out if statements like there are aliens or there is an infinite number of universes are actually true or false. But since they're statements, they're conceivably true or false. All truth claims can be settled in theory at least, right? The theory ran into trouble right away. Eubulides was Aristotle's contemporary. Eubulides, this guy. 7 paradoxes are ascribed to him, the most famous one being this one. This declarative sentence is grammatically well-formed, it's about something, yet we can't ever settle its truth value definitely here. It's like saying this sentence is false. If it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true again. Not all statements are either true or false, it seems. Some are arguably both true and false. It shows that the statements, all and only statements, are necessarily either true or false is itself false. That means truth as correspondence goes down the drain too. We can't rule the liar's paradox out of court either. It's a statement after all. To do so would mean admitting our theory doesn't cover all statements. It would mean banning perfectly harmless, self-referential statements like this one as well. There's no real justification for limiting truth theory like this. There's no agreed upon answer to these paradoxes even today. The first component of the correspondence theory is arguably false. What about the second? This is a statement after all. A coherent theory must include the statements used to frame it, obviously. But what real-world things or state of affairs can it possibly correspond to? If it doesn't, then isn't it false by its own lights? Saying it neither corresponds nor doesn't correspond won't help here. For then it's neither true nor false that true statements have real-world correspondence and false ones don't either. This type of criticism goes back to this guy. All statements in a system or theory about truth, he realized, can't be reduced to correspondence, testable truth claims. It creates self-reference problems. In 1931, this guy proved some statements in an axiomatic mathematical system are undecidable, that the system can't prove its own consistency even. It all goes back to this dude. Axiomatizing mathematics, set theory, he shows, leads to self-referential paradoxes. But then math isn't purely logical either. The third component is flawed too. This problem goes back to this dude. It's to be found not just in this work, but in his principles of philosophy, his letters, and so on. This dude questioned the whole idea that our mental ideas or statements are copies of physical reality. The problem goes as follows. How can quantitative reality be copied in qualitative experiences of color, pain, or smell? In fact, how can quantitative properties of mental acts like extension or 3D be exact copies of physical reality? After all, the image on the retina is flat and ill-defined. It means 3D perception is largely a mental construct. But then, how can we speak of our mental acts or statements copying reality? No component of Aristotle's theory makes sense, it seems. Maybe you think all this is too meta, but we're looking for a theory, remember? And that involves all and only reason, exceptionless rules. And then we can't make exceptions for our own theory statements. Intellectual honesty demands our theories coherent, at least. Besides, there are much more straightforward counterexamples, like negative statements. The last three aren't just factual statements. Everything we know points to them being actually true. What positive, real-world objects or state of affairs do these negative statements correspond to, though? The last two statements can be rewritten as positive claims. But we can't do that with every negative claim, like the first statement, or Venus has no moons. And negative claims is a huge statement class, so to rule it out of court is even less justified here. We wouldn't be able to speak of falsity if we did, which would make every statement true per definition, which would make our theory totally useless, not just absurd. Another huge chunk of non-factual statements are logical statements, conceptual truths. Their truth doesn't depend on correspondence, but on the relation between their terms. Truth being formal here, it can be reduced to logical laws and basic inference rules. This distinction between factual and logical claims is clearly made by these two dudes. But important work here was also made by that dude, that dude, that dude, and that old geezer. The same goes for mathematical statements. There's no real-world object or state of affairs uniquely picked out in math statements either. This guy thought it was because they're reducible to pure logic. But this dude showed it can't be done, remember? That you again. Where was I? He thought mathematical statements require a kind of pure space-time intuition at least. But this dude shows it can't be right either. What use is finger counting or number lines here? Besides, Riemannian geometry is counterintuitive. The classical theory involves claiming a straightforward, sharp, unique correspondence between statements and reality, which either means assuming there's no such thing as paradox, vagueness, or ambiguity, or that we can't make statements about infinity, or that statements in the first category aren't statements, or that they can be made into sharp, unique truth claims, or that they can be ruled out of court. These claims are all implausible, question-begging, or factually wrong. Then there's irony. We might agree ironic statements are true by comparing their intended meaning with their stated meaning. Truth is communicated here wholly in a non-statement way. Finally, value statements aren't reducible to sharp, unique correspondence. These are all statements, There's nothing that says value statements can't actually be true, though. There's a fact of the matter as to whether someone murdered someone else, say, or if someone is a bad person or a cruel leader. Nonetheless, we're not talking about a clear-cut one-to-one correspondence between statement and reality here. As this dude has pointed out the last 40 years or so, value statements can be both factual and evaluative at the same time. Correspondence doesn't work. This has led some to switch to a coherence theory. This dude and the dude who wrote this book helped develop it based off of this dude's work. Here, the truth of a statement is determined by its place in the overall system of statements or beliefs. Yep. That dude again. As he shows, having to count up a myriad of relations a statement has makes truth itself a vague and useless notion. Surely basic factual claims like this ball is round can be settled by direct observation too. Truth as coherence doesn't really work as a theory either, nor will a mixed theory. No theory, it seems. Does that mean truth is an illusion? Of course not. That theories fail doesn't mean the concept is meaningless, much less that there's no such thing as truth. It doesn't follow. Maybe truth is a bit like time. It tends to slip through our fingers when we try to answer what it is, but it's still highly useful and real. We wouldn't know how to exist or think without it either. The best place to start is here. Read these dudes' work too, or wait till my History of Philosophy book is finished.